These rare photographs of Bonnie and Clyde reveal the real people behind the legend. Their names are synonymous with love and rebellion. The two outlaws who wreaked a trail of havoc across the United States and went out in a blaze of glory. But what's the real story of Bonnie and Clyde? Clyde Barrow was born in Toledo, Texas in 1909, where he grew up in a poor family of 7 children. Clyde and his older brother Buck turned to crime in their teens, and Clyde was already in trouble with the police at 16 years of age. Meanwhile, in West Texas, young Bonnie Parker was being raised by her mother Emma. While still yet to reach 16, she dropped out of school to marry Roy Thornton, her high school boyfriend. Her mother, though, disapproved of the match. By the time the infamous pair met in 1930, then, Clyde had already just narrowly escaped being sent to prison, though his brother Buck and an accomplice had not been so lucky. Bonnie, on the other hand, was unemployed and living with a friend in West Dallas. Yet on that fateful day when the two crossed paths, Clyde stopped over by the house in which Bonnie was living. What's more, apparently it was love at first sight between the pair. 2 months later, however, the law caught up with Clyde. He was sent to McLennan County Jail in Waco, Texas, on charges of car theft and burglary. Yet, while he was there, Bonnie sneaked a gun into the jail. Just 8 days after his sentence started then, Clyde used the gun to break out of prison. However, his bid for freedom lasted just 1 week before he was caught and sentenced to 14 years in the infamously harsh Eastham Prison in Houston County, Texas. Clyde's mother petitioned for an early parole, a successful endeavor in fact, as in February 1932, he was duly released. Still, the stint in jail had done little to reform him. In fact, together with longtime friend Raymond Hamilton and fellow ex-Eastham inmate Ralph Fultz, he set up the Barrow Gang. The group set their sights on a bid to break prisoners out of Eastham Prison, and so began stealing from hardware stores and gas stations in order to acquire the cash and weapons they'd need. And by April 1932, they'd robbed their first bank. At first, it was just Clyde who joined in with the gang's criminal activities, but when Bonnie managed to give a message to 3 inmates at Eastham informing them of the plan, she became a member of the group in her own right. Soon after, Bonnie was arrested when an attempted hardware store burglary went wrong. She spent 2 months in jail, where she kept herself occupied by writing poetry. And when she rejoined with Clyde upon her release, his criminal reputation had gone up a notch. While Bonnie was in jail, in fact, Clyde had been implicated in the fatal shooting of a store clerk during a failed robbery, even though he hadn't been the one to pull the trigger. Then, a few months later, a deputy was killed during an altercation with the Barrow Gang. This time, though, Clyde was responsible. Joining forces with the 16-year-old W.D. Jones, Bonnie and Clyde fled Dallas to a hideout in Joplin, Missouri. With them not content to lay low, however, their loud and rambunctious lifestyles soon attracted some unwelcome attention. Consequently, on April 13, 1933, local lawmen descended on the apartment. In the ensuing chaos, 2 policemen were killed, and a stash of personal items was left behind. Among the effects were one of Bonnie's poems and photographs of the young criminals posing with weapons. Finds that would spark the media's love affair with the glamorous Bonnie and Clyde. Now living as outlaws, the gang renewed their crime spree. They continued to make headlines with their kidnappings and robberies, but also through the people they shot and killed. And although initially captivated by the fugitives' exploits, the public began to turn against them and their murderous, seemingly bloodthirsty natures. However, when new gang member Henry Methvin gunned down 2 highway patrolmen in Grapevine, Texas, it was Bonnie and Clyde who got the blame. Indeed, the press ran an eyewitness account, later brought into disrepute, that accused Bonnie of laughing as she shot one of the men, and the public were out for blood. Spurred on by the outcry, the law finally and fatally caught up with Bonnie and Clyde on May 23, 1934. 6 police officers ambushed the couple on a road in rural Louisiana, killing them in a hail of bullets. By then, the Barrow Gang had been responsible for the deaths of at least 9 lawmen and several other people. In death, though, sympathy for Bonnie and Clyde began to reemerge. More than 20,000 people showed up for Bonnie's funeral in Dallas, while questions were raised over the legitimacy of the violent tactics used by the police officers responsible for the couple's deaths. Ultimately, Bonnie and Clyde were to go down in history as two of the most famous criminals of the so-called public enemy era in the 1930s. Furthermore, the 1967 movie Bonnie and Clyde, featuring Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty in the titular roles, would cement the criminal duo's place in the public consciousness. They'd also figure in countless songs and TV shows over the years, and they even inspired a Bonnie and Clyde festival, held every year near the location of the fatal ambush. Today, then, many cast doubt on the image of the ruthless, gun-toting gangsters so readily peddled by the media of the day. Indeed, in reality, the pair maintained close relationships with their family members, tried to shy away from bloodshed, and enjoyed music and the arts. But, as is the case with so many myths, the fantasy makes for a far better story. Please don't forget to share this video with your friends below. Please don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to receive everything that's new.